Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another video. Hope you are all doing well. Prior to getting into the video, I just want to bring up something really quick. So there's a guy's name's Josh Cooper, really good dude. He was a police officer for the Ukiah Police Department for a period of time. Now he is currently a deputy with the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office. His house was in Mendocino County. He just lost his house, everything that he owned, including his dog, in an electrical fire. And his family started to GoFundMe to help him recoup some of those losses. And if you're interested in helping him out with that, like I said, really good guy. If you're interested in helping him out with that, I'm gonna link the link for the GoFundMe down in the description for this video. Now, getting into the video, sorry if I sound horrible. I'm really sick right now, but I'm gonna try to get through this the best that I can. So, as I stated in my last video, today I'm going to be continuing on Kevin Murray. For those of you who didn't watch my last video, Kevin Murray was a sergeant with the Ukiah Police Department who's facing 3 pretty serious criminal cases right now, as well as a civil excessive force case that he lost, which I'm going to be discussing in today's video. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. And for this initial part of this incident, I'm going to be discussing it through Kevin Murray's perspective, and then I'll get into the victim's perspective, and the victim's name is Chris. So for now, I'm going to start with Kevin Murray. So Kevin, at this point in time, this occurred October 13th of 2018, so a few years ago. Kevin wasn't a sergeant at the time. He was a regular police officer, and he was working night shift. This occurred at approximately 11 o'clock at night. So he overheard his dispatch say that there was a verbal argument or fight or something like that at this apartment complex. So Kevin Murray's first on scene by himself, shows up, walks up the flight of stairs to this landing at this apartment complex. On his right, he sees a female standing outside. And according to Kevin, he sees Chris, who he knows from prior contacts, and Chris is standing outside the door of his apartment. Across the way, there's another female who is crying, touching her face, and is also intoxicated. And she's pointing at Chris, saying that Chris hit her. So according to Kevin, Kevin tells Chris to sit on the ground. Kevin says no, and at which point Kevin approaches Chris, tries to grab Chris's left arm with his left hand. Chris resists, pulls back, goes back into his apartment, tries to close the door and closes it on Kevin's left arm. Also tries to push Kevin out of his apartment and swings and tries to punch Kevin, misses. And then Kevin takes his right hand and punches Chris on the left side of his face. They go down into the apartment, and Kevin states that Chris was continuing to resist and not cooperating. Kevin was able to handcuff Chris's left hand and put it behind his back, but Chris was refusing to provide his right hand to Kevin. And at which point Kevin was kneed Chris approximately 3 times in both sides of his rib cage. Other officers showed up, helped Kevin handcuff Chris fully. They took him to UVMC, Ukiah Valley Medical Center, and the doctors state that Chris was all messed up. He had a black eye, bleeding from his face. He had several fractured and broken ribs and a punctured lung as a result of the broken ribs. He had massive lacerations that went down almost to the bone on his left hand because of how tight the handcuff was around his left wrist. Nerve damage on his shoulder, which I'll get into in a little bit. So just really messed up. He had to get flown out to a hospital in Santa Rosa, where he was in the ICU for 5 days, I believe. Now, Kevin wrote a report. His initial report, which I've read, very small. Not a lot of articulation, not a lot of detail, which is very odd because, speaking as someone who was in law enforcement for a while, it was something like that. When you cause a substantial amount of injury or trauma to somebody, you're going to want to articulate yourself to the best of your ability to show that you were in the right and to show that what you did was justified, so that you don't open yourself up for criminal prosecution or to be sued civilly, right? But that wasn't done for this report. So also, after he wrote his first report, which like I said is very small, a detective with the Ukiah Police Department, I don't know why he did this. I'm not sure. I was never able to clarify. But a detective, within a couple days of this occurring, went back out to the apartment complex, re-interviewed everybody there, including one of the neighbors, the female that Kevin first saw on the right-hand side when he walked up the stairs, who lives directly like within a foot of Chris's apartment. And her statement to this detective is, no, Chris was fully inside of his apartment at the time. I didn't see him push or try to swing on Kevin at all, but she said she didn't see what happened once they went to the apartment because the doors close automatically. There's a safety mechanism on them, like a spring, that the doors are not meant to stay open, so they automatically close. So she said, but Chris was fully inside of his apartment. The door was almost all the way closed when Kevin like basically rushed in there, according to her. Also, this detective located a Snapchat video from a 14-year-old that lived at the location that showed the initial entry that Kevin had made. And her statement in that video completely contradicted everything that Kevin had put in his initial report. So then Kevin generated a supplemental report to go with his initial report where he changed some stuff around. So the first one, he said that Chris was fully outside of his apartment. On the secondary one, he said that Chris was in the threshold of his doorway. He also stated that in the first one, he tried to grab Chris's left arm, and then Chris slammed the door on his left arm. But in the secondary report, he said that he tried to grab Chris's right arm, and the door slammed on Kevin's right hand, which he later received x-rays for. There was some bruising on his hand. However, he also hit Chris with his right hand. So who knows what that injury is actually from. So some stuff got changed around. And I don't know if Kevin changed his second report based on, after he found out about the Snapchat video and stuff. Also, that detective who located that video was chastised and treated very, very poorly for a while because he located that video, which contradicted Kevin, because essentially he snitched on Kevin by showing that, everything that Kevin put in his original report wasn't necessarily true and accurate. So, and also Chris, when he was arrested, he wasn't arrested for anything that occurred there. So when the detective went back and other officers supplemental reports that were at the scene also that talked to everybody there, the original incident, I'm not going to get into all the details because it's stupid nonsense. But basically what happened is there was some allegation from that female that they were not dating or anything like that. They're just neighbors. That Chris had, she stated that Chris had hit her in the face. However, Chris said she was pointing in his face like that and he hit her hand away from his face and she hit herself with her own hand in his face. No substantial injury or any injury to anybody there. Nobody wanted to press charges on anybody for anything. It was just a big giant misunderstanding. Everybody had been drinking. So the only thing that Chris had gotten arrested for was for this felony section of resisting a law enforcement officer because of what Kevin had alleged that Chris had done to him. So that was what his charge was. So it goes to court. It goes to a preliminary hearing after Chris gets out of the hospital. And the defense attorney, I've read the court minutes as well, questioned Kevin Murray very, very harshly. I mean, really got into him because of the fact that not only did he do two separate reports, but he changed details from the first one to the second one. So he didn't really have a good reason as to why he did that. And he stated that he created a second supplemental report because his command staff wanted him to, which is entirely possible. However, when she said, well, why did you say this in your first one, but then you changed it in the second one? He didn't really have an answer for that. So he was contradicting himself. He wasn't consistent. In fact, even in the court minutes, the judge stated that Kevin Murray was impeaching himself on the stand, meaning he wasn't being truthful or staying consistent, like I just said. So Chris gets on the stand, and I should state this, that Chris and Kevin had a history. Kevin and Chris knew each other from approximately 2 or 3 years prior, where Kevin showed up to Chris's same apartment where Chris had been a suspect in throwing eggs, I guess, at somebody's car. That was never substantiated. Chris never went to court for it or anything like that, but Kevin went to question him. And according to Chris, Kevin was very unprofessional and rude, and Kevin didn't like Chris both of them didn't like each other right off the bat during that incident, the initial one. So Chris allowed Kevin to come into his place and look at his eggs in his refrigerator, and Kevin told Chris, like, hey, these eggs match the ones that were thrown at the car. I don't know how he was able to determine that, but Chris then told him, like, hey, get out of he said, you're ridiculous, get out of my apartment. And they got into like a verbal argument, and then, basically Chris closed the door and Kevin left. So there was a history there. But Chris gets on the stand for this, and he said, no, this is not what happened. He said, when Kevin showed up, he said, I had a neighbor that had just been yelling at me. He said, I didn't do anything wrong. And I was standing fully in my apartment. He said, half of my body was behind my door. So only the right side of my body was really visible for the most part. And then, but he said he was standing in his apartment, and he said, no, Kevin told me to sit on the ground. I said I wasn't going to do it because I didn't do anything wrong. And then he said, I told Kevin he was not allowed to come in my apartment. And then he said Kevin rushed in there. And then Chris said that when Kevin rushed in, he was in the process of already closing the door, but Kevin hit the door and it hit Chris in the face, knocking him basically unconscious, or making it so he couldn't really remember what was occurring, and he was delirious and stuff. And Chris said that when he came to, Chris was lying face down, wedged in between his entertainment center. Kevin was on top of him and had handcuffed his left hand at that point and was yelling at Chris to stop resisting and stop fighting him. But Chris said, I wasn't doing that. He said, because of how I was positioned in between my entertainment center, I was unable to remove my right arm from underneath me. Also, Kevin was on my back and he was lifting his body up and kneeing Chris in on both sides of his rib cage. So the other officer showed up, as Kevin had stated, and cuffed up Chris's right hand. Then Chris said when Kevin Murray had him cuffed and was walking him out, he held the cuffs up behind Chris's back to where his arms were extended up behind his back, which caused permanent nerve damage in his shoulder area as a result of that. So they played the Snapchat video in court as well, which I'm just gonna let you guys view right now.
Leave my house.
So they showed the video, they got testimony from Chris, they listened to Kevin Murray's testimony, they also brought in the neighbor that the detective had talked to, got her testimony, and the judge basically said, hey, so we're not going to do the felony section for resisting, but we are going to do the misdemeanor section 148 PC against Chris, because Chris still didn't listen to Kevin Murray when Kevin told him to sit down. So they wanted to go to jury trial. So it was set for jury trial. Now, during this entire thing, Kevin had body cam footage. He had a body cam on during this entire thing. Showed the entire incident, walking up the stairs, the initial thing, him entering into the apartment, but it got detached during the scuffle inside the apartment, but the audio was still going at that point, but you couldn't really tell what was going on. But that never got brought up in court. Nobody ever mentioned it. Kevin never brought it up. It was never mentioned in any of his reports. The defense attorney had no knowledge that the body cam footage existed. And it's also very weird too, because as I stated before, during incidents like that where you cause substantial injury and trauma to somebody as a result of something you did as a police officer, you want to have as much evidence on your side as possible, especially going into court, to show that you were in the right and what you did was right. But they omitted it and didn't even acted like it didn't exist, essentially. So it was set for jury trial. And during all of this, Chris was in the process of suing Kevin Murray in the city of Ukiah for violating his Fourth Amendment right by entering his apartment illegally, as well as excessive use of force, since Kevin had no injury on his person basically whatsoever, and Chris sustained all these massive amounts of injuries as a result of this incident. So it was set for jury trial, and they were doing the civil case at the same time. Now, the civil attorney dug up this body cam footage that everyone acted like they didn't exist. And then the defense attorney found out about it. That was Chris's defense attorney, and basically wrote a letter to the DA's office and saying like, hey, you guys didn't disclose this. You were basically hiding evidence. So the body cam footage came out, which showed completely that it showed that Kevin was not honest and truthful in his reports. And all the charges against Chris got completely dropped at that point through the DA's office. And I'll go ahead and break for the body cam footage right now that Kevin Murray had on him during the night of this incident.
Cops will handle it. Everybody get in your apartments now. It's after hours and this is enough.
Stay away from me.
He didn't touch you. You hit me.
Are you fucking crazy?
Hey, sir,
No,
can I have you
not
take a
at
seat
all,
right there
'cause
for me?
you
No, I
We just
can't
witnessed
leave my
it.
house. No, you're not coming. I'm not going outside. I did not do anything wrong. Oh.
Get down. Give me your
Really?
fucking hands right now.
Hey.
Give me your hands right now. Give me
Hey.
your hands right now.
Hey.
Give me your hands right now.
Hey, officer.
Stop fighting. I'm going to tase you.
That girl out there.
Stop fighting. I'm going to
Officer.
tase you.
Officer.
I'm fighting with one in an apartment.
I am not.
Somebody should go.
Officer, I'm not fighting you.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
Officer.
Roll over on your belly. Put your hands
What
behind
am I
your back.
doing?
Roll over on your belly. Put your hands behind your back.
What am I doing?
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
What are you doing?
Put your hands behind your back.
What are you doing?
Put your hands behind your
What
back.
are you doing? I'm in my house.
Put your hands behind your back. Stop
What are you
fighting with me.
doing? What are you doing? I'm in my house. What are you doing?
Put your hand behind your back right now.
What are you doing? I'm in my house, dude. What are you doing?
6. I got one on the ground. I can't get him in cuffs.
Dude, I'm right here.
I'm upstairs, and I'm
Dude,
in
ow, you're gonna break
the
my
apartment
left
to
arm.
the north,
Ow, ow,
where
my...
the disturbance is.
Dude, you're gonna break my left arm.
Give me your other hand right now.
Yeah, you're gonna break... Dude, you're gonna...
Give me your other hand right
Dude,
now.
I can't. Ow, ow.
Put your hand behind your
Dude,
back right
I
now.
can't. God, that's fucking...
Put your hand behind your back right now.
Dude,
Put your hand behind your back right now.
Where's Officer Pintain? Where's Officer... Oh,
Put your
why
hand
are you
behind your
beating
back
me?
right
What
now.
did I do?
Stop fighting.
What the fuck?
Put your hand
Ow!
behind your back.
Ah!
Put your hand
What
behind
the
your back.
fuck are you doing? Ah!
Put your hand behind your back right now. Stop fighting. Put your hand behind your back. Give me your fucking hand.
So as you can see, Kevin walked up the stairs, sees this stupid mess at the top of it, you know, with like, you know, all that stuff that's going on. Chris is clearly inside of his apartment at that point, says like, no, you can't come in, begins closing the door. Kevin obviously just charges in there. Now I can't see what happens after that. I can't see if Chris did actually push him. I can't see if Chris did try to hit him, but what I can tell pretty much right away, well, you can actually see when the body cam falls on the floor, what I can see is that you can still see like Kevin's kind of silhouette because it's dark, but you have like, you know, but you see him swing with his right hand and then you hear the connect on obviously Chris's face. And then you can hear Chris begin to be delirious and not really know what's going on. And then you hear, you know, obviously they go to the floor at that point. You can hear Kevin saying, stop resisting, but you can also hear that, you know, Chris doesn't really understand what's happening and saying, I'm not resisting you. Now I wasn't there. I didn't see any of this, obviously, and the only people that were in that room at the time was Chris and Kevin, but based on the audio and based on the reports that I've read in the court minutes and the video and stuff like that, it doesn't sound like Chris was being that combative or resistive to where it warranted all those massive permanent injuries that Chris sustained as a result of Kevin doing this to him. Now, I know that's like kind of Monday morning quarterbacking this incident that I wasn't involved at. And like I said, I just said it already, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but just based on what I've seen, that's my opinion. So like I said, once this footage came up and it got discovered, because it wasn't, you know, brought to the court's attention prior to that, all the charges the DA had against Chris got completely dropped. And then Chris won his civil suit against the city of Ukiah for a little over $1 million. Now, the other thing that was interesting about all this too, aside from the body cam stuff, is that shortly after this incident, before it went to court, the Ukiah Police Department had a use of force review board that was conducted by 2 lieutenants at the time, McQuarrie and Noble is now the chief of police for Ukiah Police Department. And they did it in-house, which is standard practice, except for nowadays it's changing. They're starting to do at various agencies civilian review boards where civilians will come in and sit on these review boards because, you know, people in the community think that there could be potential bias and stuff like that and things not getting done as they should just because, you know, your peers that typically sit on these review boards could be your buddies and they could not, like, you know, they could be more lenient and stuff like that. So for this incident, these 2 lieutenants had this use of force review board with some Ukiah police officers sat on it. And the police officers, so the lieutenant said, okay, so they gave them Kevin Murray's first report that, like I said, was very, very small. It's like 2 paragraphs long. It said, here's the report. Was Kevin justified in using the use of force that he did? And they're like, we can't go off of that because there's no articulation. Where's the body cam footage? Where's the witnesses' statements? Where's the suspect statements? Where's literally anything? And they said, no, you don't get any of that. This is what you get. You get a report. This is the report you get. You have to go off of this. And there was some back and forth for a little bit on that. Like, no, we can't. Like, we can't make a determination that's going to be fair and accurate based on this one little report alone. And, you know, Noble's like, no, I was a DT instructor. It looks fine to me. Like, this is what you guys have to do. So essentially they were ordered to make a decision based on that report, and they had to. So they said, well, based on this one report and literally no other information, yeah, it looks justified. So they ended up saying that they cleared him. And because they cleared him, he was not involved in an internal affairs investigation. Kevin wasn't. So there was no IA. Now, if they had said that he wasn't justified, then there would have been an IA, and it would have went down a lot different for him in court. But obviously that didn't happen. Also, another interesting thing is Kevin was promoted to sergeant during all of this. So I don't know. I don't work there. I'd never worked there. I don't really know any of these guys on a personal level. I don't know their policies and procedures. I don't know if that's how they typically conduct their business. In my opinion, based on my experiences, that's not how that stuff should typically go down. But again, I wasn't there at the scene. I didn't work for that department, so I don't know. I'm just presenting you guys with the facts because, like I said, I've read the court minutes, I've read all the reports, I've seen all the videos, and everything like that. So that's all I know for this one, and that's going to wrap it up for next Friday. And the Friday after that, I'm going to do the next 2 criminal cases that Kevin is currently fighting and involved with, because a lot of you guys asked me to do that, so that's what I'm going to do. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.